Hello everyone, welcome back to the GameSword stage at E3 2016. Today, Justin Hayward and I are joined by Harvey Smith, co-creative director on Dishonored 2 at Arcane Studios. Harvey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, what was it like being able to reveal gameplay at the Bethesda showcase?
Oh my God, such a relief. We announced Dishonored 2 at E3 last year with the trailer with Emily in it, fighting clockwork soldiers with Kieran Jindosh and a mission called the Clockwork Mansion. And that was fantastic. The reception we got from hardcore fans of Dishonored and from new people was great, of course. But everybody's been saying, when are you going to show us gameplay? When are you going to show us gameplay? Is there a new engine? What's going on? What about Corvo? You know, we have all these questions all the time, right? And so we're just like waiting and waiting and waiting. And so from my dear friend Rafael Colantonio and me and our art director Sebastian Mitton, who helped with a lot of the footage for that, it's all in-game. It's all missions you play in the game. Just like huge outpouring of thanks for everybody's response, because we have just been inundated by the positivity from people who have now seen the game and they're excited again. So it's great.
Yeah, and it showed off a lot of really cool abilities. That time one in particular I thought was really clever.
Oh, thank you, yeah. You know, other people have touched upon similar mechanics before, but we really wanted, our level design team led by level design director Christophe Carrier and lead level designer Joachim David. We worked very closely with them, and one of their big ideas was pushing that mission. And we debated all kinds of things. Should you have your powers like Blink or Devouring Swarm, or should you have none of that and just have the Outsider's timepiece? And for those who missed what he's talking about, you don't have your supernatural powers in this manner, but you can move back and forth in two different time periods. You can watch people through the other time period. Time passes in both of them continuously, regardless of where you're at. It's kind of mind-bending, and it's this concept we had this time. Let's do Dishonored bigger and better, new protagonists, all new powers, new city. And we can talk about any of those things if you want, but let's build the missions around big, interesting themes. And so we've shown the Clockwork Mansion where the walls, floor, and ceiling move. We've shown the Dust District, which is hit by these periodic random storms that change stealth and visibility. And another one of them is the a Crack in the Slab mission, where you can travel back and forth in two time periods within the same house.
Let's talk a little bit about, so if you played the first game as Corvo, obviously by the end of the game you have a load of abilities. How do you kind of deal with like the reset problem? You know, when you're coming into Dishonored 2, is Corvo still fully stacked with abilities, or do you have to dial it back a bit for new players?
Well, you know, you can play Emily if you want to have the new experience, right? All of her powers are new, and she starts out just as the Empress and builds up from there. The Outsider offers her his mark. But Corvo is a different situation. If you want the nostalgic Dishonored experience, you play Corvo. And how we handle the fact that he had all the powers you chose before, and is maybe a bit of a spoiler, but all I can say is that we handle it, and you get to see the Outsider again, and his interaction with Corvo is a little different than his interaction with Emily. And you know, we talked a little bit about that. You're the first person who's actually asked that question. And you see pretty quickly in the game how we resolve that, how we handle that. But one thing that's brand new that we just started talking about yesterday morning, I don't think most people have heard about it, is that there's another way to play the game this time. When you meet the Outsider early on in the game and he offers you his mark, which is how you get supernatural powers, you can say no.
So this is your secret third path.
Yeah, you can literally tell him, I've had enough of your gifts, I don't want anything more from you. And so you can play the entire game without Blink, without possession, without any supernatural powers whatsoever. We call it kind of Flesh and Steel mode. There was an achievement we did last time called Flesh and Steel, or only Flesh and Steel. But I can tell you it dramatically changes the game. It's a lot harder. Personally, I like playing with the powers, but once in a while I do a playthrough with no powers, and it's leaning, sneaking, hiding, crouching under things, climbing up on top of buildings. The game is much more vertical this time. Karnaca is a place with giant windmills and wind-powered security devices, so you can get on the rooftops much more. But doing all of that is possible without supernatural powers. It's just a little harder. And so it really, you get this game, you can play as Emily with all her new powers, you can play as Corvo, you can slaughter a bunch of people, or you can literally not engage in violence as you play. You can play the entire game without killing anyone. And you also could experiment with no powers mode, which really makes it a different experience.
And
Yeah.
it's really cool that you have Emily, who's a strong female character. Was there any pushback from anybody higher up saying, maybe this isn't a good, we want a strong male protagonist because that's what sells?
No, I mean, people were pretty excited about Emily. Like, I think early on when I pitched it, maybe someone at the company thought that I meant the 10-year-old girl, and they were like, wait a second, But as soon as I explained, like, no, we're talking about grown-up Empress Emily who has, her pillars are Dunwall, Empress, and Assassin, right? So she's stylish, and she's not just a female Corvo, She has her own personality, and I think we avoided all the traps that people fall into often when they have a female protagonist. Our narrative designer is Sashka Duval. I worked very closely with her in Lyon, France, and she was a huge fan of the first game, who came in to help us make the second game. And it was early on, it was our special project to make sure we handle Emily exactly right. We worked very closely with the art directors and the art team to get her costume right, to get her body right, to get her moves right. It's subtle details, right? There was a scene early in the game where someone attacks her before she's a supernatural badass, right? And she fights back. And early on, there was a scene where somebody animated her to slap the guy, and then he punches her, and we were just like, no. Emily punches this guy, and he feels it. It's a good punch, and then he hits her back. So it's details like that, right? If this is a character you want to be, she has to be a badass. She has to be aspirational, So.
She has to be that from the very beginning. She can't just have the magical thing happen to her and then become.
Right. There's got to be a kernel of strength there to begin with, So.
I think when I played Dishonored, the setting of Dunwall, I live in London, so obviously, and I've spent time in Edinburgh, all of these themes coming together to make a truly unforgettable city. But we're moving out of Dunwall in Dishonored 2, right?
Yeah, the game starts and ends in Dunwall, but we spend most of it down in Karnaca, which is like the southern edge of our empire. So we call it the Jewel of the South, but now it's kind of a rotting place. And the vegetation's different, the light in the sky is different, the industry is different there, the songs, the culture, it's a different place. But because we include Dunwall and Karnaca in the same game, you get the contrast between the two of them.
So it's like the darkness and the light, but both are still pretty dark.
Dunwall is, like you said, it's London and Edinburgh. It's grey, it's pointed roofs, it's brick, and Karnaca is much more like Spain, Italy, a little bit of Greece. It's just that currently it's crushed under the boot of a guy called the Duke of Serkonos, Duke Luca Abel, and it's a place that's going through a troubled time, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, and thinking about the abilities that you have, that Emily does have kind of a new set. It's a different way to play the game. Where did you come up with the ideas for that?
Well,
were they things you wanted to include in the first game, and maybe now you get a chance to try them out?
No, those are all new concepts, and our game design team, we work very closely with them to pitch a bunch of ideas, prototype a bunch of stuff, cut the ones that didn't work, and then even toward the end when we had the set of powers, Johan, our technical artist, came to us one day and he was like, hey, I have an idea for a power, and he pitched it, and it ended up being, after the game design team massaged it a bit, it ended up being Domino, So we polled the team, we talked to people, we all talk about playing Dishonored and what we would have liked to been able to do, and then we put it through some filters, right? Does this feel like appropriate to the game? It's a game about courtly intrigue and then running through grimy alleys, and it's not a game about taking pleasure in killing or whatever. It's a game about political assassination and fighting for your life. And so there are some powers that really fit well in that environment. And our big philosophies are about exploration, which means you can play at your pace. You're not just following someone else's scripted linear path. You're exploring, you're finding your own way in many different ways, geographically, but also in terms of your approach, your style. But it's not just exploration, it's improvisation, right? And so the way we do powers, you can actually combine them in ways that we didn't plan before. So there's a scene where a group of religious fanatics is about to, they have a firing squad, they're about to put down some heretics. And our lead designer, Dinga Bakaba, was playing, and he wanted to do something different for the guy that he was demonstrating the game to. And so instead of doing what he normally does, which is use far reach to yank the guy with the pistol out of the scene, he had this flash of inspiration, and he dominoed the guy with the pistol and the victim together. And so when the guy with the pistol pulled the trigger, it killed both of them, because when you use Emily's domino power, you link people and they share the same fate. And so it was just like this flash of inspiration and a cool move and poetic justice in a way.
So you said the Dishonored 1 and 2 are being bridged by a novel and a series of comics. Are they, key? Do you need to be able to read those to enjoy
No.
Dishonored 2? Is there going to be a way? I remember, I believe Mass Effect, when Mass Effect went onto PS3, you could there was an interactive comic that they put in the game. Are you planning anything like that?
Well, I would say that bridging Dishonored 1 and Dishonored 2, 15 years pass. Our alt-Victorian world roughly takes place 1837 in Dishonored 1. That's the year that Spring Hill Jack was sighted. This guy with a kind of a demon mask and boots jumping from building to building. And so imagining Corvo as the guy who sprung, or who inspired that legend, that's kind of what we were thinking.
I never anticipated a Spring Heel Jack reference.
There you go. I very rarely talk to journalists who recognize that reference. So
I have some
congratulations.
podcast recommendations for you. If
Great.
you like
Okay. Awesome.
stuff like that.
But 1837, the first game. So the next game is like 15 years after that, and the DLC with Dowd bridges some of the gap, because some of the plot elements from 1 feed into the eventual, the Dishonored 2. And that's where we experimented with a voiced protagonist, which Emily has a voice, Corvo has a voice in the new game. But then also the comics take place just before, I think, the new game, and the novel takes place like 3 years before the new game, I think. So I would say the game Dishonored 1, Dishonored 2, anyone can approach it, right? It works just if you walk into it. It's an exotic fantasy world with stealth and first-person combat and supernatural powers. But if you know all of that stuff, like if you've read the comics and you've read the novels and you've played the DLC, I would say you have a very rich experience in that circumstance.
And you said that, I remember in the presentation, you said that every alley, everything has to tell a story.
That's our goal.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
How do you, a lot of players these days, maybe they don't appreciate things like that as deeply. Have you done ways to sort of signpost, like you should be looking at this stuff?
We find that our approach to making games is to pack way more into the game than you can see in one playthrough. So you'll only see like 15, or you'll only see like less than 50% in one pass. But we think everybody will see something.
Awesome. Harvey, thank you so much for joining us. For more on E3 2016, make sure you keep your eyes peeled to GameSpot.com.
Thank you.